the details about the itinerary of the wild salmon
You're on
program.
YouTube with
And
Blues
John
on the
Morrison
60s Scoop.
is the head coordinator for that, and she has information on her Facebook page as well. And I will be posting information on this on my Facebook page as well. Yeah, just to say to the listeners, I went to the Wild Salmon Caravan last year. It was awesome. I got to see a lot of people in action, mobilizing. I saw salmon leather for the first time in my life. I also saw people making clothing out of salmon and everything. So go check it out. I'll see you there. And in other news on Co-op Radio 100.5 CFRO, just the other day, September 10th, a judge says federal portion of 60 Scoop settlement agreement is final. A federal court judge has decided he has no jurisdiction to alter the legal fees set out in the 60 Scoop settlement agreement approved earlier this year by another federal court judge. Federal court judge Michael Shore approved the settlement agreement in May. The $875 million settlement agreement set aside $750 million for all status First Nations and Inuit children placed in foster care or adopted by a non-Indigenous parent between 1951 and 1991. The agreement puts $50 million towards a 60 Scoop Healing Foundation, and the remaining $75 million was remarked for lawyers' fees because the settlement stemmed from an Ontario class action suit. Lawyers who have acted in federal court would collect half the legal fees, total 37.5 million, while the other half would go to the lawyers who had acted in Ontario Superior Court. The settlement agreement also had to be approved by both in federal and Ontario court. In June, an Ontario Superior Court judge approved the bulk of the settlement but rejected the legal fees as excessive. He proposed reducing the overall amount by half and significantly reducing the amount earmarked for federal class counsel. The legal fees were delinked from the rest of the settlement, allowing them to deal with separately. Lawyers in federal court action then went back to federal court for one more judicial sign off on the fees. In this decision released Monday, federal court judge Michael Phelan ruled that Shore's order was final, and since no formal appeal had been filed, Phelan had no jurisdiction to deal further with federal class counsel fees. Justice Shore enjoyed a unique perspective from which to assess the pertinent facts, wrote Phelan. He was intimately involved in the mediation process and in the creation of the settlement. He had an opportunity to appreciate the role of counsel and was or cognizant of federal class counsel's ongoing role in the implementation of the settlement. Critics have questioned Shore's involvement in both the mediation of the approval of the agreement and the way that he handled the final hearings in Saskatoon in May. The Ontario Superior Court ruling on the Ontario portion of the fees was expected to come after the federal court decision. This is Co-op Radio 100.5 CFRO, and I'm Gennargy O'Sullivan. We'll be right back. All right, as you heard, the judicial complaint filed, that the judge, had made his final decision on the 60 Scoop application. It has been approved. You heard within that decision that he said, that no official complaints had been made, and he based some of his decision on that. Yet, most recently, an article by CBC, Jorge Barrera, on August 24th, there was an article about a judicial complaint filed against the judge who approved the 60 Scoop settlement, and that was Joan Frame, and that was circulated all over Facebook and got a number of comments from people saying things like, oh, you should sue the lawyers, and this is totally unfair. They've been calling it systematic racism. One of those who has been open about her opposition to the 60 Scoop settlement has been Rose Sikkema. She's also known as Redsoulbluez. Welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. How are you?
Well, not too bad.
Good. Yeah, I'm interested. Like, they say one thing and then something else is going on, and it doesn't seem like the left hand knows much about what the right's doing, and vice versa. So, what I'm understanding from the article you just read is that the judge has said, my hands are tied. This is the final decision. There's no more appeals. There's no more talking about this. The money is set out so, and this is how it's going to happen.
This is how it is.
I'm listening. Like, one thread, one word I would use to tie together all these stories. Like, people may wonder, well, we jumped from fish to the 60 Scoop to this to that. And one thing I'm seeing here is, like, the failure to consult the very people who are affected by these decisions that the government takes upon themselves to make without any consultation, without consent,
Well,
or without good knowledge.
now I finally know what that slogan means. Nothing about us without us.
That's right.
That basically means if it has anything to do with us, our livelihood, then you need to consult with us and get our consent. It's not so hard to understand. Even the court has problems understanding what full consultation means, and their idea of consultation is very different to ours, obviously, as I heard in court today. And you're right, that is the thread that we can look at.
Yeah, I think it's a common thread, throughout all these stories.
The common thread
is the government's failure to consult or properly inform the people of what's going on. Yesterday there were those hearings, with the Carolyn Bennett, right, the top Indian agent in this country, and the elected chiefs, right, and the chiefs that are representing through organizations like UBCIC, and once again, they say, well, these are talks about self-determination, yet they're the ones who are determining the framework, what's going to happen, and it's all to lay the groundwork for this new proposed framework where they're going to further extinguish Indian rights under the Indian Act.
Well, there seems to be a lot of conflict of interest within the system. One of the complaints that Joan Frame had is a judicial complaint filed Friday against Federal Court Justice Mike Bushore, questions how he could mediate and approve the $875 million 60 Scoop settlement agreement when it also created a healing foundation that was incorporated with the judge as a director. I also received another complaint that was filed in court just recently on the 10th, and I'm having problems loading this page, but it was a complaint from Robert Doucette, who also complained against the Judge Shore and his conduct in court, saying that he was not able to act impartially, and it was very evident in his conduct, his own conduct in court, his body language, lack of empathy, and so on and so forth.
Well, one can't help but notice the distinct difference which groups of people within Canada under Canadian law are being dealt with. As far as I'm concerned, if any other, for instance, if the government had been dealing with any other group than Indian people under the Indian Act in this manner, it wouldn't stand. It wouldn't hold.
It wouldn't stand in court.
It wouldn't. It would not be happening. number one, I wasn't aware that, Canada had the authority to appoint themselves jobs, right? Which is essentially what the judge has done. He's given himself a nice job on the foundation that's supposed to, and again, this foundation, well, what's going on with that? Again, it's determining how individuals will heal from their trauma. We don't have the choice. We don't have the say. I didn't ask for a foundation. I don't know if you did.
No, I didn't. I
No.
didn't, and I haven't found the residential school healing foundation very helpful,
Mhm.
and they're not. Information about them is not readily made available.
Well,
either.
exactly, and and in this word reconciliation is being thrown around a lot. The government seeks to reconcile. Well, we can look at like legal definitions of these words, right? Because this is where they trip us up in their language. But to reconcile, what does that really mean? Well, as far as I'm concerned, that is not what Canada is doing. They're not acting in good faith, and they're acting like a lot of us don't even read or have any comprehension of what's going on in our own country. And fair enough, a lot of people don't know due process. They don't understand how the courts work. They don't understand how politics work or how bills are created or made and turned into law. So there's a lot going on. Like you can't just talk about it in 5 minutes or an hour or even a couple of hours.
Well, 3 minutes is what was witnessed in court during the proceedings, that there were members who were claimants, right? Who were only given 3 minutes to
Yeah.
state their case and why they were opposed to the settlement. And when they started talking at a personal level about being a member of 60 Scoop, they were dismissed by Judge Shore and in fact reprimanded. He took most of their 3 minutes telling them the rules of the court and that they could talk about this during the Healing Foundation because that is what that is for, and very, very vague and sad.
Well, as I said, I don't think that if you're dealing with any other group in a similar process or procedure that that it would happen like this. It just wouldn't. The result would not be as it stands for us. We're affected by 60 Scoop. And
will you be opting in or opting out? Or is that too personal?
No, it's not too personal. I'm kind of trying to figure out an evil plan to have it both ways.
Oh, yes. I know a few who are also on that same route.
Yeah, because like the portion of the money that concerns me the most is, first of all, the portion that went to the lawyers. I would like to see a specific account of how the lawyers justify that they earned this money. And another thing is I would like to see how the foundation proposes to spend these hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to help us get through this. And also I'd like to know how the amount of anywhere between $25,000 to $50,000 was agreed upon, because I was not consulted about that. And as far as I'm concerned, that would be probably like, I could consider that a year's lost wages of potential or whatever I may have experienced had I not gone through the 60 Scoop experience, like a year's wages or a commission for an art piece or what have you, right? So $50,000 for my whole life.
That's $1,000 a year or somewhere,
right? That's just not gonna cut it. That's just not gonna do it.
We're worth way much more than that.
Well, yeah, I think there is no determined value you can
Listen.
put on this, but if there was, it would not be what they're proposing.
No, definitely not. And I feel really insulted by this consultation process. A lot of people might think, well, you need to be more biased, Gennady. You're a reporter, you're a broadcaster. But you know what? We've only been given our voice here, and only at a community level for the last 20 or 30 years. And I just feel like I'm just trying to level out this playing field of the systematic racism that we have to deal with and be truthful. This is from our perspective. This is only further damaging those who are impacted by 60 Scoop, because we have had to begin to look within ourselves and our own experiences once this settlement was introduced to us. And then we had to put up with the lawyers litigating who was going to be a part of this process. That took 6 months. And then once that was decided, then there was the issue around the legal fees. And it doesn't matter. Even if they did consult us, they still would have been paid $75 million, whether they consult us before or after.
Exactly, and what also is problematic is the fact that damages and abuse have been left out of the compensation process, right? And if we wish to have these things, we need to opt out of this settlement that Canada proposes, meaning that we can, we're not allowed to deal with Canada, and we have to go directly to each province respectively where you were born, and sue them independently in their Supreme Courts. Now, I don't know how that's going to happen or who's going to agree to do this to help represent the people that wish to opt out and to have the damages and abuse on record and be compensated for that as well. So this whole time from the get-go is problematic. Just on the onset of it itself. I compare it to, for example, if we were dealing with it's an extreme example, but a good allegory would be if we were dealing with a sexual assault case. Now, if the victim chooses to bring this up or not, that is up to them. The court doesn't come to the victim and say, hey, we want to do this on your behalf, and this is how it's all going to happen, and these are the lawyers you're going to have.
Or worse still, the offender, the one that raped you as a child, doesn't come up and say, look, let's settle this.
Exactly. So, I don't understand why what the real reason, what's really motivating Canada to do this. I would really like to know. What do you think?
That's what I think.
Wow. Yeah, so I don't know if there's much more I can add to that, other than there's just tons of conflict of interest. I think that we as a group should go after these lawyers.
Thank you. This is Co-op Radio 100.5 CFRO. Move on to the Opiate Memorial, okay? listening to Co-op Radio. That was Redsoulbluez. She's in the studio with us now. We've been talking about the 60 scoop application settlement and how it's been improved, whether or not we will opt in or opt out. But now we're going to move on a little bit here to talk about the opioid memorial that happened in the downtown east side just this last weekend. Rose was there.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was, hosted by, the George Family Sundance, came down and did some ceremony and did some prayer and fed the people. And, it was about, remembering those that we lost in the downtown east side. And it was, what I saw was, it was a great comfort to the people. And people welcomed the ceremony. It was held in Oppenheimer Park. The rain held off just long enough, to let us finish. And it was really quite beautiful. Let's see, Ruben George was there, Robert Haney, several of the community leaders, our spiritual leaders in the community. And
Kelly White.
Kelly White was there. And, oh wow, just so many people, it was good to see a lot of people there.
I
You
saw
were
some.
there?
I saw some people from the downtown east side too. Those who are mostly affected
Yes.
by their addictions, and that was a major plus for me. I was there, and you're right. I got to speak with Amy George and Ruben George, and kind of get their thoughts on what's happening in Indian country. So I'm gonna hook you up with that right now, and we'll.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was, like I said, we got to feed the people, and there was 2 teepees, and people were invited to make prayer ties if they wanted to help remember their loved ones, and those would be, taken away by the people and taken care of in a good way. And it's just every little bit helps to move forward, to not get bogged down and stuck in this immense sense of loss, that's happening all around us, and whether we're impacted directly or indirectly, we all feel it. We all feel it, and a lot of us who've been around a while have seen our downtown east side grow, or like change into something that we're afraid of, and because of these drugs, these opioids that are permitted to be on the streets.
Okay, so I'm going to leave the listeners with Ruben George, an interview I did with him about the update of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and then we'll close with Redsoulbluez. Thanks for listening to Co-op Radio 100.5 CFRO.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, I finally caught up with Ruben George at Oppenheimer Park during the honoring of see what it does. Where did your sound go? Little Red? What do you think? Which song?
Whatever.
Sorry.
I seen firsthand a lady who came to visit me when I was in Edmonton and asked if I could help her
Motherless
because
child, eh?
her son who was
Motherless
5 and
child?
daughter who was 3
Yeah.
were getting treated for chemo, getting cancer from drinking and bathing in the water that they have nothing else to do. They can't afford to go out and do and get what they get. So I could see why some Albertans are angry. Not like how she says. She's talking about the people who are making millions, not talking about the people who are dying and suffering.
What do you think the consequences are going to be now that
Well, they're trying to figure it out. You mean with Canada?
we're Canada?
Yeah, they're
what
trying
would
to
be the fault?
they're trying to figure it out. They say let's go back to the drawing board and let's go back to consultation. But the courts will order them to make it fair, and we will win.
Yeah.
We have more on board to win. If they start to do that instead of giving up, which I think they will, if they start to do that, we'll have even more on board. We're doing another additional study on the air quality and how the existing refineries in our area have polluted the air in our territory. And then we're doing another health study. In our assessment, if anyone reads it, they'll find that 87% of our traditional food came from the Broad Inlet. And that cleaning our inlet with absolutely no resources. The first time in 30 years we cleaned it enough that we could have a clam harvest. Or our salmon count for Indian River went down to 6,000 10 years ago, and we brought it up to 10 million. Or the elk reintroduction. So we're creating things to improve our health by eating our traditional food, by creating it, by helping our ecosystem, and they're ruining it again. So we'll have more on board. We'll have way more on board than what we did to win this victory, and it'll be easier next time. And we told them a long time ago, we said, you could do this the easy way or the hard way. They chose the hard way. Now their choice is do it the hard way or the harder way, and we're ready for both, and we will win. I predicted this when I talked to I talked to interviewers like yourself, and they said, do you think we'll win before? And I said, I believe in the Canadian Constitution protecting our Indigenous rights. We're up to 250 legal victories around resource extraction projects over the last 3 years. And I believe we'll win again. Everything's changing now. And Canada should see that, so they don't have to put taxpayers' money through this, because it's already going to cost them $9 billion for something that won't happen. Right, yeah.
Only got 45 seconds left.